I welcome you to our monthly broadcast at Anselmo Academy and greatly appreciate you tuning in support of this initiative. Today, we present Antonio Pompa-Baldi, Italian-born concert pianist, recording artist, and a distinguished professor of piano. Welcome, Antonio.
Thank you so much, Vera. It's such a great pleasure to be here.
Likewise, it's our honor. You just heard Antonio perform a Chopin sonata in B flat. Can you please tell us a little bit about where it was, or
Yeah.
maybe a little detail about that concert?
Yes, well, that particular place in Poland, in Duzhniki, there is the oldest continuously running Chopin festival in Poland. And the artistic director is a great musician and dear friend of mine, Piotr Pależny. And you could, in fact, see him seated there in the first row.
I did.
And everybody was wearing a mask because this was 2021. Most places were still closed to these types of gatherings, live concerts. And in fact, it was one of my very first performances after the shutdown.
Yeah.
And it has, an added on significance for that reason. But of course, it doesn't need it because the place is really special. It is a place where Chopin, the young Chopin, spent time vacationing, and because it's a spa town, and he was with his family there as a young man. And they organized this festival there in the Chopin Manor where he lived. And it's a beautiful place. Of course, I had already played there a couple of times, but this time, I've had in my repertoire the Chopin Second Piano Sonata for many years, but I had never played it there. So playing it there and seeing the reaction of the audience in that special place, it really makes it an unforgettable experience, I have to say. And I apologize for the little glitches in the recording, but this was a live streaming that they had in during the festival. So it's all live and unedited, but it has some
Mhm.
disconnect sometimes between video and sound. But fortunately, the sound is okay because it was recorded on a separate track.
Yeah, fantastic. So we will feature Antonio's bio shortly, his more videos and pictures and a dialogue. But first, we have a couple of announcements from Anselmo Academy. Our annual benefit is scheduled for May 6th at Liederkranz Club. Great. Thank you so much for this flyer. We invite all interested guests to attend or help with donations. We are celebrating Academy's 25th year anniversary this spring. Next, we have multiple student recitals that are scheduled in Manhattan, Brooklyn, Queens, and New Jersey this spring in May and some parts of June. And we invite all interested guests to attend. It's free admission, but please do contact us to RSVP so that we know to expect you. And again, you can find contact us form at our website, anselmoacademy.org. We are a nonprofit 501c3 organization founded in 2001. We specialize in organizing private but mostly group classes at local schools and various community organizations. We serve close to 2,000 students a week throughout the academic year in Manhattan, Brooklyn, Queens, New Jersey, Rockland County, and Westchester. And our programs are some are general music classes that are large groups, like 20 plus children, but mostly these are small group classes of 5 or 6 children that are taught at local schools, as I already said, in piano, violin, guitar, recorder, musical theater, voice, let's see, choir, and drama, and more. So feel free to visit our website for more information about our organization. And please also subscribe to our social media platforms. And we have two e-newsletters that you can find at our homepage, bottom right. First is called Academic Newsletter, that comes out in the beginning of every month, where we list our internal happenings and all our programs throughout New York and New Jersey. And a second newsletter is called On Stage, that comes out toward third week of every month, where we list some of our own student recitals and performances, but also feature broadcast and artists like we have today, that we invite esteemed musicians from all around the world to come and share the story and inspire many of our listeners, with about the musical journey and what they went through to become who they are today. We hope you enjoy our program today. Thanks so much. Can we please have Antonio's picture on the screen as I go through his bio? Wonderful. I love this picture of yours I found. Um, born and raised in Foggia, Italy, Antonio Pompa-Baldi won the Cleveland International Piano Competition in 1999 and embarked on a multifaceted career that continues to extend across five continents. A top prize winner, the 1998 Margaret Long competition in Paris, France, Antonio also won a silver medal at the 2001 Van Cliburn International Piano Competition. With a concerto repertoire including more than 60 works, Antonio performed cycles of all the Rachmaninoff piano concertos, the five Beethoven piano concertos, and both Brahms concertos with various orchestras. He has played recitals in most major venues over the world. Antonio Pompa-Baldi studied with the great Italian pedagogue Anna Maria Pennella, whom he credits as his biggest musical influence. He also studied with another great exponent of the Neapolitan school, legendary pianist Aldo Ciccolini. And among other important mentors and musical influences, he names Paul Badura Skoda and Jörg Demos. Antonio appears in the world's most well-known concert venues, including New York Carnegie Hall, Cleveland Sovereign's Hall, Milan Sala Verdi, Boston Symphony Hall, Shanghai Grand Theater, and Paris Al Pleyel, to name a few. He has collaborated with leading conductors, including Hans Graf, Christoph Urbanski, James Conlon, Miguel Hart Bedoya, and others. And we have a full bio in the comments. And he has performed with ensembles and colleagues such as Takach String Quartet, trumpeter Alison Bolson, cellist Sharon Robinson, violinist Ivan Zenati and Ilya Keller, and principals of the Cleveland New York Philharmonic and Julia Quartet, among others. Antonio is a regular guest at the Lang Lang Festival in Shenzhen and Hangzhou, China, and recent appearances include him performing in Vienna, London, Paris, New York, Auckland, Jerusalem, Cape Town, many venues in China, as well as Poland, Germany, Mexico, Canada, Spain, and many other places around the globe. He has recorded 35 CDs to date for various labels, and among compositions he recorded the complete piano and chamber music works of Grieg, the Joseph Reinberger piano sonatas, the complete Hummel piano sonatas, and CDs dedicated to Brahms, Schumann, Liszt, Respighi, and Rachmaninoff. For the Steinway label, he recorded songs by Francis Poulenc and Edith Piaf, arranged for solo piano. I would love to know more about this, as well as CD titled Napoli, which features new piano versions of famous Neapolitan songs elaborated by Roberto Piana. Among his latest releases are the transcriptions for solo piano of the Respighi B minor violin sonata, the suites by Debussy, Luca Mascardi, and Barber for piano duo, recorded with his wife, pianist Emanuela Priscioni. This latest album was published with the title Sweet Nothings by the Steinway label. Antonio Pompa-Baldi is a Steinway artist. He's also a Steinway recording artist, as well as one of the most prominently featured artists in the stereo recording catalog. He's distinguished professor of piano and artist in residence at the Cleveland Institute of Music, where he also serves as head of the keyboard and guitar performance department. His students have been prize winners in important competitions such as Margaret Long, Hilton Head, Eisen Yoon, and Gina Bacauer. He's regularly invited by the most prestigious competition as jury member and is in high demand as a masterclass professor. In 2015, he founded the Todi International Music Masters Festival, where he serves as faculty and artistic director. He is vice director to education at the Lang Lang Art World Institution in Hangzhou, China, and is an advisory board of the Lang Lang International Music Foundation of New York. In addition to honorary professorships at the Beijing China Conservatory, Shenyang Conservatory, and various other institutions. In 2025, he was appointed to the International Chair in Piano at the F.A. Bonporti Conservatory of Music at Riva del Garda, Italy. Thanks so much. And we are moving on to our next video excerpt of Antonio playing Roberto Piana, Glances on the Divine Comedy, Part 1. Before we begin, can we please hear a little bit about this piece? Tell us a little bit about it before we hear it.
Absolutely. Well, first of all, thank you for reading all that bio. I mean, I didn't know you were going to read it all. Um, the piece by Roberto Piana called "Glances on the Divine Comedy," it was commissioned by me in 2021 to celebrate the 700th anniversary of the passing of Dante Alighieri, who is, of course, the perhaps the most important poet in the history of Italy and Italian language. In fact, he probably is single-handedly responsible for making the Italian language what we know today. Because at a time when the educated people were still speaking Latin, and the language of the people changed from region to region in the peninsula, he wrote what was at the time a sensational bestseller in his own dialect, the dialect of Florence. And because everybody wanted to read it, that's how Italian became actually the language of Florence became the language of the entire peninsula. He basically gave us the national language. Plus, he was an incredibly gifted poet and literary force. And so, to honor him, of course, we all know Franz Liszt's Dante Sonata. So I wanted to to play a new piece written to honor him. So I asked my friend and great composer Roberto Piana to write a work, and he composed a, I would say, a very large scope work divided into three books, just like the Divine Comedy: Inferno, Purgatory, and Paradise. So what I performed publicly multiple times is the first book, Inferno, which is about 22 minutes, because the whole work is about an hour. And by the way, it has been recorded together with the Liszt Dante Sonata and should be released by the Steinway label in the near future.
Oh, how interesting. I love that idea that you do it together with Liz Sonata. Yeah,
Yes.
fantastic. So now we can hear it. Fantastic. Wonderful. Next, we have our dialogue, and I had sent you some questions, so let's begin.
If you
First,
don't mind, if I may just interject for a second,
yeah.
because I didn't know which expert excerpt from the piano you were gonna broadcast. That
Mhm.
particular movement is called Cerberus. You know, the three-headed dog, the ferocious beast. So this, of course, from the first book, Inferno. There are nine movements in that first book, and they alternate from dark and demonic and ferocious sometimes, like this particular movement, to sometimes completely different and very poetic and reflective and angelical. So it is a very interesting work with a lot of variety. Yeah, I just wanted to mention that.
Yes. Great. I listened to the whole thing. So,
Oh, I'm sure.
um, okay. So let's begin. So tell us about your journey. What were your dreams in your childhood? Talk maybe about your family, if they had influence on your musical, beginning, right, of your musical studies. Anything you'd like to add, funny stories, your inspirations, anything like this. Go ahead.
Well, perhaps my story, and as it relates to starting my musical journey, is a little bit unusual in the sense that um, no one in my family was a professional musician or an amateur musician for that matter. No one even listened to classical music. My parents were very young when I was born. My mom was 20 years old, my father 21. They listened to pop music. And when I was growing up, I mean, when I was born, they were listening constantly to music. They loved music, but not classical. They were not exposed to it. And we were in a smaller Italian town in the Puglia region, Foggia, as you said. It is a lovely place. I loved growing up there, but it was not a big cultural center. So we didn't have many chances to be exposed to any different genre like classical music. At any rate, my mother is very musical, I think, because she sang very beautifully, very in tune. No training, but a very beautiful voice. Now, it's very different case for my father. I would say my father is tone deaf. But they were both extremely supportive. So how did I start? It was completely by chance. There was a TV broadcast, and at the time, when I was about 3 years old, in Italy, there were only two channels on TV, both owned by the state. So it was Rai Uno or Rai Due, National Television Channel 1 or National Television Channel 2. And apparently, by chance, there was a piano concerto being broadcast. I don't know who was playing or what, but it was definitely a piano concerto. I don't remember, but my parents tell me that when they turned on the TV and this was on, I was a restless child, but I froze and I started listening to it. And through the length of the broadcast, I didn't move, I didn't bat an eye. And when it was over, I was very upset that it was over. I just wanted to continue. And they tried to explain to me that they couldn't, make it continue. It was over. So I said, then buy me a keyboard. I want to play. And apparently, this went on for weeks after that. I was very, very impressed by that. And so they bought me a toy keyboard and I started playing by ear. I don't know, maybe soundtracks of Disney movies or something like that, or the pop songs that they were listening to. And so by the time I was 4 years old, they were convinced that I should see a teacher. So they started asking friends if they knew a piano teacher. And they found one, and we went to his place. And this I remember because when we went to his place, this teacher was about mid 60s. So, by my view today and by any standards, not an old man, but my 4-year-old eyes saw him as Methuselah because he was much older than my grandparents, and I was totally intimidated by him, only to find out later that he was the sweetest man ever, but I didn't know at the time. And so when I when he saw me, he said to my parents, I think he's too young. Maybe come back in a year or so. And when he knows how to read and write, maybe better. And then I said, I know how to read and write because my mother had taught me. And yes, I was only 4, but I could read and write. And so he said, okay, let me give you a test. So he gave me a rhythmic test to see if I could imitate and repeat certain rhythms that went from simpler to more complex. And then I could. And so then he spun me around and he played some notes and then asked me to go back to the piano and play them. And I picked the right ones. So then he decided to give me lessons. And I started with him. And yes, then I never stopped basically. And my parents knew nothing about music, but they were extremely supportive. The only thing they told me as I was continuing to do it is, we will support you. The important thing is if you do this, you have to do it well, because otherwise it's better not to do it at all. And that was how I started.
Wonderful. Um, so let's talk about the teachers maybe that have inspired you throughout your journey. Talk about your first teacher that you mentioned in the bio that you feel is one of the most important people in your life.
Well, I mean, I should first say that this first teacher who I started piano lessons with, he was not a professional pianist really, but he was a good musician and he was a good composer, arranger, and he knew music theory really well. And he was capable of teaching a 4-year-old music theory, which is a gift, I think. And I think that I have had solid foundations thanks to him in the musical language, in harmony, and in of course in rhythm and solfege and all of that. Thanks to him, and then at the piano he also had good instincts, in spite of him not being a professional pianist. And I studied with him for 7 years. So then I went to conservatory in my hometown because by the time I started middle school at 11, you were eligible to audition to go to conservatory, and that's what I did. But perhaps, you know, pianistically, I didn't really progress a lot there because it was too regimented and a little bit too narrow-minded for my view. Although in conservatory, I learned a lot of other things and I played chamber music like crazy. I was playing with all my friends. Every year I would play with 20, 25 people of different instruments, lots of pieces, and then perform with them at the end of year recitals. So I was playing every day almost. Um, and I do believe that is a great school in and of itself. Um, and because it teaches you how to breathe and how to phrase differently and how to imitate the sound of other instruments. Then finally, I graduated conservatory when I was 18. And in Italy, for the system of the time, I didn't have any further studies to pursue. That was the equivalent of a master's degree. But I got it in parallel with my high school diploma. And it's a little bit ridiculous. Now the system is different. Now you can actually attend conservatory to get a bachelor's and a master's degree, but back then you couldn't. So I was lucky at this point in life, which I felt I still needed a teacher. I went to a competition and I played, and I met Anna Maria Pennella. Anna Maria Pennella was from Naples. She was an amazing musician and pedagogue. She had studied in her own youth with Marguerite Long, and also master classes with Michelangeli in Bolzano and Arezzo. And then she got married and she moved to Colombia to follow her husband, who was a musicologist and conductor, Rino Maione. And she founded the Conservatory of Medellin. And then she devoted herself mostly to teaching. Although, I mean, she had won some important competitions, she could have had a career, but then this move and this marriage and kids, especially with societal barriers of the time, she was basically, I don't want to say forced to give up, but pretty much, to give up dreams of a career. But she became an incredibly influential teacher in Italy. And when I met her at this competition, she had already retired from the Naples Conservatory, where she spent her all her teaching career. And so she invited me to audition for her to go to study with her privately at her own home, because she liked my playing a lot. But she said, I sense that there is a lot that you still haven't explored and that you could really do a lot. And I was still so young to be without a teacher. So it was the perfect time to meet her. And when I went to her home, I remember very vividly how the first thing I played for her was Waldstein Sonata by Beethoven. And we spent 3 hours on the first opening bars of that piece, because from then there it was like a rabbit hole, talking about how composers really utilize the material that they come up with, and how we can find ways to make our playing organic and have a sense of structure but freedom at the same time, and then sound, and then one thing led to another, and then we had this 3 hour conversation, where you I was learning, but it felt like we were having a conversation, and it felt like the chemistry was absolutely perfect, so I never wanted to leave. And then I couldn't wait to go back. And we worked together for 5 years, and then we became, even though there was a great age difference, but we became really friends. And then, to fast forward, I also introduced my then girlfriend, soon to be fiance and wife, to her, and then she studied with her as well, and then she became the maid of honor at our wedding, as well as she was the godmother to our daughter. So we became really family, and so her influence extended beyond the music world. But I think she was also a composer, and she had a degree in composition. So her approach to music was at once completely free, but also with this great sense of structure and understanding from within. And that is one of the things that I mostly credit her to have transmitted to me, as well as the I don't know how to describe it in words, but the cult of the singing tone, which, sometimes we associate it to schools. We say, the great Russian school and the cult of singing tone. But I think that this is universal. It may be approached in different ways, but she had this extreme cult for the singing tone and projection and freedom, physical freedom at the keyboard in order to be able to project the sound. And I was a little bit boxed in when I met her, and she completely freed me. And yeah, so I mean, I could talk about her for hours and hours and hours, but that's why I say that she's one of the biggest, if not the biggest, influences in my life. Of course, there were other teachers. I also studied for 2 years with Aldo Ciccolini, who was one of the greatest pianists of the 20th century, one of the most prolific recording artists, and also a very gifted teacher. But from him, I mean, I learned a lot, mostly by having the good fortune of sitting in when he was practicing. And his practicing was basically playing through repertoire. And he had such an immense repertoire, and I would sit meters away and just everything I would study everything that he was doing, and the sound and how it affected it, and that physical movements that he made and the sound that they produced. And it was really a great learning experience, as well as our conversations.
Wonderful. Maybe also tell us about Paul Badura if you want.
Yeah, I mean, with Jörg Demus and Paul Badura-Skoda, both from Vienna, friends, and also members of a duo, famous duo. They were both fantastic musicians. I first met Jörg Demus when he came to my hometown conservatory to perform and give a workshop on the well-tempered clavier. And so students were selected to play for him, and we went through basically the whole two books of the well-tempered clavier. And then I was also doing a Bach marathon with friends and colleagues, playing the concertos for one, two, three, four pianos for keyboards of Bach. And so he was there with us to coach us and to teach us, and that was an incredible experience. And I also had a chance to work on Franck Prelude, Chorale and Fugue, which was Franck was one of the composers that I don't want to say specialized, but that he deeply loved and knew and performed regularly. And so that was very formative. And with Badura Skoda, I met him in a competition, and then I attended some master classes of him in Switzerland and in Siena and in other places. And in Calabria, where I frequented an academy in Alto Monte, beautiful place where you could see both the western and eastern coast of Italy from the summit. And he would come and give master classes, and they were very interesting. And from him, I would say I learned the importance of having a good source, knowing your sources, and trusting the editions that you were following, and the importance also of interpreting the sign on the score. And, he was especially knowledgeable, like encyclopedic knowledge, especially when it came to Bach, Beethoven, Mozart, and Schubert. Of course, his knowledge extended past those, but those were the composers that he devoted his life with. And when he sat down and demonstrated, when you played something by Schubert or Mozart for him, just his demonstrations alone were something never to be forgotten.
Fantastic. All right, let's move on to the next question. Let's talk about your teaching. Talk about your students, your teaching style, your passion for teaching. What does it mean to you to be your mentor for your students?
Well, the first thing that it means is it's a great responsibility, because you can affect positively, if everything goes the way it should, the life of younger people who hopefully will go on to continue their musical journey and be musicians or be music lovers for the rest of their lives. And I take that very, very seriously. It is a big responsibility. But the reason I became a teacher before I knew that I was becoming one. I was only 16 when I first started teaching. And it happened in the most natural way possible. I saw that, some friends were asking me questions about some things that they couldn't solve on their own, or they were struggling with. And in some cases, these were things that I had already played. And so I could share with them what I had done as my approach and so on. In some other cases, it was some things that I never even heard of. And I still found that I could help. And so that was a revelation to me, because I didn't know. And also, it was a very beautiful feeling to see that I could be helpful. And then soon, because of that, many of my friends were coming to me to ask. And then it became a regular thing. And until the point where I remember, to my surprise, that even some of the younger professors at my school were coming to me to ask, okay, how do you do this? How do you do that? That was really, I was only 18, and I was, still finishing school. And then, it was both the need to work, because I don't come from a wealthy family, and to support myself as I traveled to competitions or master classes and so on. So I started teaching more regularly, and for a fee, I would say, like more in a professional way, only later. But it was a seamless continuation of that. And I never stopped. And so even as I was doing my concerts or competitions, and then the concerts that ensued, it often they were paired with master classes. And when the opportunity arose to become a professor in America after we moved here, I took it. And so the two things went parallel. It wasn't that I first focused on practicing and winning competitions and having a career and then teaching. It was totally hand in hand all the time. And
Excellent. Hmm.
And it continues to this day. I mean, I try to balance. Balance is the struggle, of course, because teaching can be very time consuming, and it's not obviously confined to lessons. It's confined also to being an advisor and a mentor and being there for your students as they prepare for competitions. So they ask you for advice, for life advice, or for career advice. You know, it's almost like managing or helping to manage their career building. And so on. But I am lucky that I am on faculty at the Cleveland Institute of Music, and I've been on faculty here for almost 25 years now. And I have wonderful students, I have wonderful colleagues, and it's a stimulating environment. We have great visiting artists all the time. So it's a lab for exchanging ideas or absorbing ideas. And as you know, I'm sure you share this feeling, one never finishes learning, thank God. And so I'm still learning, and I'm trying to share everything I know and with my students. And it's just wonderful. It's something that I would never want to give up.
Fantastic. Um, so what is your definition of success?
It's very easy for me because success for me means being able to live a life that's filled with music and hopefully have it in a professional way so that you don't have to worry about having another job. So if you can live with music, be it teaching, performing, writing about music, composing, arranging, recording, or a combination of all of the above, which is what I do, then that is an extremely fulfilling and successful life.
Fantastic. And so let's talk about young musicians today. Um, Maybe your students aside, in general. So young students today, maybe college students today, um, what do you feel that they should be focusing on, and maybe what are they maybe missing in the goals?
Um, Obviously, it's difficult to generalize, but I do come in contact with thousands of musicians, young musicians, regularly in my wearing multiple hats. And I see that one of the challenges nowadays is to remain focused on why we do what we do.
Mhm.
Sometimes, we can be very preoccupied either with having a viable career so that we can make a living out of being musicians. Or some people are so focused on becoming successful beyond making a living just for the sake of being successful. And maybe to make it a little bit more obvious, what I mean is they are focused on becoming rich and famous and the glamour that they imagine maybe the life of a musician could entail if they get to their level. And then there is frustration, because of course the life of an artist in general, but especially musicians, is made of, difficult obstacles and rejections at times and reality checks. And it's not an easy straight line. But when you run into difficulties, if you do forget why you're doing this, uh, then it becomes problematic. But if you do it because you feel that you wouldn't not rather be doing anything else, and your passion and love for music are such that you do it for the journey itself, then the destination you'll find out where it leads you. Then that is very fulfilling. And I would have to say, in a way, I was lucky that my mindset, for some reason, maybe I was born with that mental makeup, I don't know, but I worried about, for sure, about being able to be financially independent when I was a teenager. As I said, because I don't come from a wealthy family. And also, one day having a family of my own, I wanted to be able to provide for my family and all of that. Those are normal, important concerns.
Yeah.
But the thought of, beyond that, the thought of not doing music or not being a musician never really occurred to me. And I would really, truly, at any point of my life, ever since I was conscious, of this passion, which is very early. I would never imagine myself doing anything else, and any rejection would just be a stimulation to work harder and do better.
Fantastic. What would I be surprised to learn about you?
Oh, I don't know. Uh, let's see. I don't know. Maybe that if I hadn't discovered a passion for music or a knack for it and predisposition for it, I would probably still be doing something creative. Because I don't know if that's surprising at all, but because I love literature, I love writing, and I thought that I might even go into that, creative writing and things like that. Um, Another thing that could be surprising is that um, I um, I loved sports. I always loved sports, and sometimes the two things don't go together. I had to give up some of them because they endangered my arms or hands, and so I had to give up tennis. I had to give up soccer. I had to give up archery. Those were the ones that I really loved.
Archery.
Yeah,
Interesting. Hmm.
yeah. And so, but long ago. And yeah, so I don't know what could be surprising, but that I have uh, taught myself how to record CDs and do all the editing and post-production process, and the same thing with videos. Videos I learned during COVID when I had more time, and that I got into, finally got the time to arrange or transcribe music, during COVID, certain pieces that I wanted to get to. So I don't know what could be surprising. I had to teach myself how to use Sibelius and all of those software music notations.
Since you mentioned transcriptions, why don't you tell us how did you arrive to wanting to do transcriptions of that? We playing some of them today, excerpts of your performances. How did you arrive to the idea of doing transcriptions, especially violin sonata, for instance?
Well, I mean, it's a complex journey because I used to write some music, my own music when I was younger, but it didn't last for very long. And I thought I was always overly self-critical, so that kind of made it very difficult for me to continue to pursue that. I just thought that I was more talented as an interpreter and a performer, but I enjoyed it, and I still have some of those pieces somewhere. But um, you asked me before also about the Edith Piaf and Francis Poulenc CD by
Mm.
Steinway, released by Steinway in 2013. That CD is called The Rascal and the Sparrow, because um, Poulenc's nickname was the Rascal. One of most important music critics had uh, defined him as half rascal, half monk, half rascal, because he had this uh, double personality of somebody who was very Catholic, very devoted, and could write masses, and then the other side of it, he was a libertine. He was even a little bit to the opposite extreme, so a rascal. Anyway, and then Edith Piaf was called the Sparrow. Piaf means the sparrow. It wasn't her real name. So in 2012, around Christmas, I was here where I am right now in my basement, in spite of the background that I chose for my Zoom. And I was listening to some music as I was working on my computer. And I was listening to some of Edith Piaf songs because, my mom loved them. So it's something that has stayed with me since I was a child. And I love them. I love Edith Piaf songs and her singing. Um, for those who don't know about Edith Piaf, she was a French artist, singer, and composer um, who did mainly cabaret shows and then became a superstar, had an incredible personality and voice. She was as small as you can imagine, probably 5 feet, if that, 4'11", but with a dynamite of a personality. Anyway, and so I was listening to that, and then a thought creeped into my mind. that I realized that in 2013 it would be the 50th year of her passing. And then I remembered that it would be the 50th year of also Francis Poulenc's passing. They died the same year, 1963. And then I remembered, oh, Poulenc wrote a piece, a original solo piano piece, the improvisation number 15, subtitled Hommage à Edith Piaf.
Mm.
Then I wanted to know, and this is a famous piece that many pianists have in their repertoire. It's a short one but beautiful. That Poulenc wrote in the style of a song of Edith Piaf, really. And so then I wanted to know, did they ever meet? And I couldn't find any information, but ultimately I concluded that they actually did not meet. So I thought, and what if I make them meet through music? And
That's
so
fantastic.
one
Yeah.
thought led to another. So I thought, okay, I need piano versions of these songs by Edith Piaf. But of course, they couldn't work for piano solo unless a real composer made them into something special for the piano without her charisma and her voice and without the lyrics. So that's when I thought of my friend Roberto Piana, who, as I said, is a composer who I collaborated with many times, and he's a fantastic composer and very eclectic. He works, he can do magic with, anything, transcribing, elaborating, composing original music, and so on. So he enthusiastically took this project on. And at the same time, the other side of it was Poulenc. And there I thought, I can take care of that part because this is merely transcribing. And so I found songs. I didn't want to do Poulenc's solo piano music except for the Hommage à Edith Piaf. That was my link between the two. So that's the only solo piano piece in the album. The rest is all transcriptions. So I transcribed 16 songs by Poulenc, who wrote many chansons. And then Roberto elaborated, because this is way more than transcribing, elaborated, recreated 10 songs by Edith Piaf. And that's how The Rascal and the Sparrow CD was born. So
Yeah.
that's, transcribing those, I had a lot of fun, a
Yeah.
great. Then, I don't have much time. I do so many things. So for a while, I didn't do much else in transcribing. But during COVID, I had recorded recently, relatively recent, before COVID, the Respighi violin sonata with a friend of mine, Fabrizio Falasca, who is an excellent violinist. And we had recorded Italian sonatas. So by Respighi, Nino Rota, which has a beautiful sonata, and also Giuseppe Martucci. And the Respighi sonata is well known. It's a masterpiece. And during COVID, I started playing it a little bit, and I wanted to be able to play it by myself because I love it so much. And so this crazy idea of arranging it, although it's already kind of challenging when you play the original part, when you actually try to also incorporate the violin part, it becomes extremely difficult. But I started finding ways to do it, and I explored more and more, and I decided to do the transcription. So I did all three movements, and it is very hard to play. You do need to have very large hands. And you also need to make frequent use of the sostenuto pedal, the middle pedal. But I had a great time. It's a beautiful work, and I recorded all of it. And it was released by Steinway. It was even published, the transcription. And so it's the publisher is Japanese. It's called Muse Press.
Mm.
And then after that, I also transcribed the Busoni Duettino Concertante. But the Busoni Duettino Concertante is a piece for two pianos. However, in reality, it is really Mozart's original music because Busoni took the last movement of Mozart's piano concerto in F major, opus Kerschel 459. That last movement, he arranged it for two pianos. And then I took that arrangement and I made it into a one piano piece, which again makes it devilishly difficult. But I don't do it to create super difficult pieces. It's just a challenge and the fact that I want to play it by myself. So I had a lot of fun, and this also has been published by Muse Press.
Fantastic. We can now hear our third video, which is the transcription of the violin sonata by Respighi. Take a look. Very nice, very Liszt-like, almost. Yeah,
This
on a
moment
piano it sounds. Yeah. Hmm.
This moment is from the middle of the second movement, but yeah, there is some Lisztian in the type of techniques and also the atmosphere, maybe. But of course, the sonata overall is, very uniquely Respighi. Yeah.
Yeah. Great. So we're now going to have picture gallery. So tell us a little bit about each picture that you sent us.
Yes, so we are here in Alto Monte, Calabria. This must be around 1997. The one to the left is, of course, Paul Badura-Skoda, and my wife Emanuela, then my girlfriend, and then, of course, myself. So this was a beautiful place. This was an academy that was created by Antonio Gonzalez, an Italian pianist and professor, who is a wonderful friend. And he was also a student of our teacher, Anna Maria Pennella. And so he founded this, and he would invite great people like Abbado, Badura Skoda, and of course the same Anna Maria Pennella would go there, Canino. And Bruno Canino is another fantastic Italian pianist who I don't know if our listeners know, but he has especially made his mark as a chamber musician, but he's a fantastic pianist, period. So anyway, it was wonderful to be there very frequently to take master classes, workshops. It was a beautiful place and a beautiful atmosphere. Oh, this is the morning, the morning after winning the Cleveland International Piano Competition 1999. Um, I was the finals were the night before, and then there was the announcement, and it was a very late night, and then after that we all, I remember there were four finalists, and the four prize winners were myself, and you know, um, the well, Sean Botkin was fourth prize, Shoko Inoue was third prize, and Vasily Primakov was second prize. And Sean Botkin was a student of Toradze,
Mm.
Alexander Lexo Torazze. So he was there. Lexo came to listen to the finals and support his student, I guess. But he was so friendly with everybody that after the announcements, he invited us to dinner. We all went out, and there was way too much alcohol that night, and we stayed out very, very late. And then the next morning at 8 o'clock, I had to go do a photo shoot. And this is that. You cannot see it in the photo, but I was hungover and my eyes were bloodshot. And then later on that day, there was the winners concert we had to play. But, wonderful moment in my life and career.
This is why you're holding your head.
Maybe. Yes, I'm holding my head. Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
There you go. This is our home in Italy, which we still have, even though we live in Cleveland. So you can see our beloved teacher, Anna Maria Pennella. This must be 2006. Yes, about 2006, because our daughter was not even maybe a year old or something, maybe even less. Uh, no, about 2006, yeah. And so Anna Maria Pennella, myself, my wife Emanuela, and our daughter Eleanor. Yeah. This is in Abruzzo, in the Apennines, in the center of Italy. And this is the great Aldo Ciccolini. Aldo Ciccolini, also from Naples, also a student like Anna Maria Pennella, but with a different teacher at the Naples Conservatory, which is one of the most important institutions historically in Italy. And he was a force of nature. He was a winner of the first prize of the Marguerite Long competition in 1949 and went on to have a great, great career. He played with all the great conductors from Karajan and Furtwängler to you name it. And then he also taught at the Paris Conservatoire, became a French citizen, but he was coming to Italy to do festivals and master classes, and he taught at an academy not far away from my hometown, and that's where I got the chance to study with him for 2 years. Fabulous pianist. And of course, this is Van Cliburn. So this is in 2001. And Van Cliburn did not judge his competition ever, but he was in the audience. And I remember the buzz when people say, oh, Van Cliburn is in the hall. And I didn't know when he would be and when he would not be. But I remember after my first round at the Van Cliburn, I will never forget. I played my first round. I went backstage, and then Bass Hall, which was inaugurated this year in 2001. So I went out the side and the artist entrance. And then there he was, and he gave me a big bear hug. I just barely met him a few days before when we had the drawing ceremony. And of course, we took a picture together. It was an outside party. But then he just especially came to hug me after my performance and congratulated me. That meant the world. And I have to say, this man was one of the sweetest men you'll ever be able to meet. When I played in Carnegie Hall, when I made my debut in Carnegie Hall in 2004, he sent flowers. I found them in my dressing room with a note, handwritten note. And when but there is a little bit of a story I can tell very quickly. I was hired one time by the West Symphony Orchestra in Thousand Oaks, California, and they had hired Van Cliburn to perform, and he suddenly canceled because it was immediately after 9/11. And he was always afraid of flying, but then for a while he didn't go anywhere. So he canceled the concert. They rebooked it for February 2002. And this time they also hired me to stand by just in case he wouldn't come, so that I could play Tchaikovsky First Piano Concerto. If Van Cliburn didn't show up, because I had the connection through the competition. So I went to Thousand Oaks, and he didn't show up for the first rehearsal. So I rehearsed with Boris Brot, God rest his soul, wonderful conductor. And then he also did not show up, believe it, for the dress rehearsal, the day of the concert. So I rehearsed, and then I was sure I was going to perform. In fact, I went and got dressed, and I was waiting in the dressing room. And then suddenly we got a phone call that he just chartered the flight and he landed.
Oh
He
my
was
God.
there. So he came and they told me, and I immediately went back to the hotel and changed and came back to listen to the concert. So he came, he spoke to Boris Brott in the dressing room, told him how he wanted the concerto to go, which places. They'd never rehearsed. And then he went out and he was really on that night. I was in the audience. He played the concerto magnificently. And he played 6 or 7 encores. I will never forget it. It was the most beautiful concert I've ever heard. And when he saw me after the concert, he still remembered me from the competition. He hugged me and said, "What are you doing here?" He asked me about my wife. And we spent time talking. He spent time talking and shaking hands with thousands of people. But I stayed behind and then, we talked for a long time. He was one of a kind, one of a kind.
Fantastic story. Hmm.
This is my dear friend and an absolutely amazing artist, Lang Lang. Talk about force of nature. He is a very, very incredible pianist and genuine artist. And also, what I admire the most about him, his commitment to spreading the love of music and sharing it with especially children and younger people. And he has done more for classical music in recent years than anybody else I know. And so I'm lucky to have him as my friend. It was lucky the way we met because I was performing in Shanghai and his first teacher, Miss Zhu Yafen, came to the concert. And so then she came to congratulate me afterwards and said, Lang Lang is starting a festival in about 5, 6 months. This was 2014 when I met Juya Fan. And the festival was to happen in January of 2015. And so she said, I would like to tell Lang Lang about you because I loved your playing and I would like him to invite you. I didn't make much of it. I said, okay, but this is wonderful that you feel this way. I'm open to the idea, but I didn't think much would come of it. And then he called me in my hotel that night. So I was really shocked. And then we talked and then we met and we became friends. And I deeply admire him. And I've had a good chance of working with him many times and with his foundation also in New York, which does great work. And so, yes, this is a moment where I was made vice director of education for his art center in Hangzhou, China.
Great. Wonderful. And we have a last video, which is The Little Mermaid and the Turquoise Fish by Castelnuovo Tedesco. Take a look. Beautiful. Well, that's it for today. Thank you so much, Antonio, again for joining us. And thank you, everyone, for watching. And we wish you, Antonio, much success in your future endeavors. And hopefully, maybe we'll meet in person one day. I would very much love that if you're here in New York.
Thank you so
Would love
much.
to. Yes. And thank you so much, everyone, for watching. Have a wonderful day.